Hello and welcome. My name is Chloe Dalton, a former GWS Giants AFLW player and founder of the Female Athlete Project. Today I'm incredibly honoured to be joined by a ridiculous two couches of female athletes and pioneers in women's sport for a really broad discussion about where women's sport is at now, where it's come from and where we hope it's going to go ahead of the 10th AFLW season. It's very, very special to be here with you all today. I'm going to introduce you one by one. At the far end, we've got Saray Taylor, Melbourne Demons AFLW player. Taylor Harris, also a D's player. Hello, Tay. Debbie Lee, AFLW pioneer of the game. Emma McKeon needs no introduction. Australia's greatest swimmer, an incredible athlete. It's very special to be sitting next to you today. Kate Maloney, captain of the Vixens, premiership winning team, huge congratulations. And Maddie Rocci, Australian Opals player as well, we've got down on the end of the couch. Who am I going to start with? Saray, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. I was like, please not me, but yeah, of course.
I introed you first, so it had to be you, didn't
eye
it?
contact as well.
It was.
Here we go.
Were you avoiding eye contact with me?
I don't think I managed to do it. I think I looked right in there.
I'm going to give you an easy one to start. What does progress in women's sport actually look like to you?
It's such a big question. I really think that you could answer it in a whole different bunch of ways. Like, I think us being able to play is progress, because for so long women weren't allowed to play sport, like let alone not get paid, but actually not be able to participate. And in some parts of the world we're still seeing that, like women don't have access to sport, they're not allowed to. So in a lot of ways, us just having a conversation about women in sport is massive progress, and it's so exciting. If we look bigger picture, being able to live off it sustainably and have a living wage throughout a whole year with families, etc. Like, I think that's probably where we're really striving for. Everyone on the list to have the same opportunity to do that. Like the amount of hours that we all put in, that's probably the biggest one. But yeah, it's definitely a balance between really appreciating the pioneers who fought so hard to get us where we are, and then really working to make sure the next generation get it a little bit better than we've had it too.
And speaking of that, Debbie, from your perspective, how would you answer that question around what progress actually looks like for you?
So progress for me is when my 9-year-old son can, talk about these wonderful athletes, really candidly. I think progress is around the visibility and what it has created. We've got athletes, wonderful athletes here that are all deserving of being paid and all the opportunities, and there's always going to be more. But the visibility it's created to the community, and for young girls and women to actually go, yes, this is here, we can do it, and they've got a pathway, but they can actually see it.
Absolutely. Tay, coming to you, how do you see the current state of women's footy and women's sport as a whole?
I think obviously I can speak on behalf of women's AFL, but I can also, as a fan of football and sport in general, it's just such an exciting time to be in the sporting community and ecosystem, as a fan, as a player, as someone who looks up to other athletes and has the ability to be in the room with them and get inspiration just by sitting across the couch or next to them. So I think that for me is just such an exciting time to be a part of this movement. And I'd say a movement because we can say 10 AFLW seasons ago, I remember this on being on the doorstep of the first game, and it was such an unknown, what's this going to be? And then it's a lockout, and it's just the most incredible thing that anyone's ever seen in our space. And I know that spread across other sports as well as a bit of oh wow, AFL is doing something, and then now NRLW is doing something, and but everyone's doing something and being a part of it. And there's so many people that deserve to have the platform to speak on topics that are not limited to sport. And I think Saray, for example, has such an incredible ability to articulate and speak on a wide range of subjects. I'm so proud to be a teammate and friend, and I think to have the platform for people such as her and everyone else who can do things bigger than just kick a football or shoot a basketball, whatever, is the reason that this is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Kate, I might come to you. Tay kind of touched on the different leagues and the expansion that we're seeing. from the netballers' point of view, like we've seen some incredible numbers just coming out of Fox and KO about viewership numbers, crowd numbers were huge, breaking records all across the board in the Suncorp Super Netball season. What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, it was incredible, and I think, as Tay said, it's such an exciting time to be part of women's sport. And I signed my first contract 14 years ago for $13,000 or $14,000 to where it is now, and it's been an incredible ride, probably over the last 5 or 6 years, to see netball. But the biggest thing for me is to see other sports within our country growing and getting those same opportunities, and I think that's progress. We've got more opportunities for more young girls to play more sports, from the grassroots level all the way to the elite level. And, you know, I got to play at Rod Laver Arena the other night in front of over 15,000 people. So it's incredible. But my biggest thing is we need a culture shift. So speak about broadcast, and that's where our money comes from. I think in Australia we grow up and it's who's your football team, who's your men's AFL team. You sit there and you watch it, but we need people to turn on the TV. We can fight for women's sport as much as we want, but we need these people who are fighting for it to actually turn the TV and watch it, because as you said, we broke records with our broadcast, and I think that's where a lot of it starts.
And Maddie, at the end, for you, like from a basketball lens, I mean, the WNBL is like incredible talent, right? Like we have some of the best talent in this country. If we look at the WNBA and what they're doing overseas, it's absolutely huge. Like there's some really big names that are really like shifting the culture over there and really challenging perspectives, I think, about women's basketball and women's sport. On home soil, what do you think the fans can be doing to kind of keep driving that conversation forward?
Yeah, like the WNBL has gone to like another level. Like we said, women's sport in general has actually taken a big step forward. But I think it comes down to promoting the sport. Like we said, we can talk about it, but the action has to happen. Especially like with the fans, for example, they come to games, but what are they actually doing behind the scenes, and what are the clubs doing to promote, and the leagues to promote the actual game? And I think that as soon as that happens, you'll see a big shift in numbers attending to games. And like the WNBL has jumped a level, but I still think there is a long way to go in it. For example, AFLW and the netball have like kicked things off, and I think that the WNBL is slowly following in their footsteps. But yeah, the fans are massive, and I think if they can promote the game, and if we can get out in the community and we can do all those things, then it will take the league to a new level.
Emma, if you reflect on being a little kid, what is one thing as a young girl that you think would have helped if you knew about what it took to be a woman in sport?
Gosh, I don't know. I think for me, growing up and watching swimming on television, I had so many female athletes that were pushing the boundaries of swimming, performing at such a high level. And I looked up to them and wanted to be like them one day. And so I think, I don't know what I'd tell that young girl. I think probably just keep loving what you're doing. And but the fact that I could see that on television and look up to those women, I knew it was possible. So that kind of ignited that fire in me. So I think now that there's so many more sports like AFLW, like there's young girls that are watching that and they know that's possible for them now. Whereas back when I was young, like that wasn't possible for a lot of young girls to look up to those kinds of sports and that were more male dominated. So I feel lucky that I had swimming, I had women in sport just pushing the boundaries, and I could look up to them.
Who were some of the swimmers that you looked up to, and what did you admire about them?
It'd be like Susie O'Neill and Libby Trickett, Stephanie Rice. There were so many. And they were women that were leading the way. Like they've actually changed swimming for the better, and we're still doing that now. Like the women are leading the way in our sport. So yeah, I think it's impressive that we've kept that going.
Yeah, absolutely. Debbie, I might put that question to you. When you were young, who were you looking up to?
All the male players, I think. I think, you know, I'm obviously not your vintage. Let's put that on the table. But yeah, I suppose growing up there was no visibility. There was no female coaches. There was no female umpires or players. So when I was growing up, I hid the fact that I played football. Even as a 6 and 7 year old, I used to play out in the streets and a car would come around the corner, I'd run into the bushes. And that was just the time of where women's sport was, particularly in a male-dominated sport. I remember going to year 12 and I was playing my first women's football final and I told no one because of fear of judgment. So I think the progression, as we talked around before, it's so great that we do have a platform that we've been able to elevate. But my experience was very different. But that's okay because we had to go through that journey and that pathway so these wonderful athletes here get the opportunity that they deserve.
I'm curious about that fear of judgment piece. Like, was it fear of being told that you shouldn't be playing or like being outcast? What did that look like?
It was fear of judgment of little girls don't play footy. You didn't see it, so it wasn't the thing to do. It was how, as a young person, I was a bit of a people pleaser, so it was going against the grain. And everywhere you looked in sport, there was men and boys. So, and that wasn't just one part of the sport, that was everywhere. So to go up against that as a young girl or a young woman growing up, that was quite challenging.
Saray, do you think pay parity is achievable in your lifetime?
Ooh, in my lifetime. I think a lot would have to shift. As you spoke about the culture, like I think there would need to be quite rapid action. So I'm not sure if it will be in my lifetime. I'm 27, so in my sporting lifetime, even in my lifetime, I'm not sure. I just think there's still quite a bit of resistance, but it speaks to how far we've come because of how much people have fought for us to get here. So I would like to think it's possible. And maybe, you know what, I'm going to make my answer yes. I think it is. I'm going to finish on optimism. I do think it is, but it just, the reality is it would be a fight. And I think that's what we're sort of all up for. There's a lot of people fighting for a long time and that continues. So yes. Ultimately, to the camera, yeah, let's make it happen.
I like that.
Oh, look, I think when you're comparing women's sport to male sport in general, we don't have pay parity at all, and we've got such a long way to go. We've come so far, which I think is so exciting, but it's how do we keep moving forward? I think, for my sport in particular, you've got athletes that are here and there's athletes that are here, and my biggest thing is we don't want to close the gap. How do we keep moving everyone in that upward now I can't speak, trajectory. But I think, as you said, Tay, before, like the more sponsors, the more eyeballs we can get, the closer we're going to get to that. But I think, we've still got such a long way to go with that.
Deb, I'd love your opinion. Yeah. Recently there was an article or whatever, and actually there's so many articles about how AFLW is running at a loss, which my immediate reaction is, how about the hundreds of thousands of young people who are now paying up their club rego at an incredible rate because of women's footy. So that's where the money is. Yeah. But that's common sense.
That's right. It's such an interesting point you make, Tay. You look at the dollars, but I would say we have our revenue, not even about money, but what else it has done has been fascinating. The reality is we wouldn't have a Pride round without AFLW. We wouldn't have 125,000 women playing the game without AFLW. We wouldn't have 70,000 girls playing from 5 to 12. It's more than just, when we talk about investment, it's more than just the game. And there's been spin-offs in what you've alluded to before around how we've all been able to elevate women's sport. We've actually been paid back overs, really, when you look at the investment because of all these other things. The brand of the AFL has changed. We look, it's a lot softer. It's softened, which it needed to be. So there's so many more elements than just the game itself, and people can't see through that. Can't see the threads of what AFLW has done. It's been absolutely fascinating, and hopefully that has in some way also helped with other sports as well, because we're all in it together to grow women's sport. So when people say it's at a loss, I laugh, because I think, oh my goodness, you obviously, where's the loss? I can't see the loss. Mm-hmm. The conversations we're having in the boardroom now with the door open for women to walk through and stay in the footy industry has been because of some of the work that AFLW has done. How do you put a price on that? I don't think you can.
Just interested to touch on that, Debbie, like the roles for women off field. How have you seen that progress in your time?
Unbelievable. We've created a whole workforce in terms of the AFLW, and I'll just talk about the footy industry at the moment. It's been second to none. We still need to do more work on how that transpires into the male space if women want to go into that space. But certainly it has created genuine, authentic conversations. Jen Watt, who's the CEO of North Melbourne, is the second woman to do that. But it is certainly, I look at the AFL now and the workforce when I walk in, I actually sometimes am trying to find where is the man, and I'm talking administration, not football departments. So I think it's really created this genuine, authentic conversation that women can be part of this industry, and you can see that they're staying, and there's really strong, talented, capable women, which we know, but they are giving professional opportunities now.
Tay, if women's sport got to operate under the same conditions men's sport often does, what would change overnight?
Overnight, well, I'm going to answer, rather than overnight, I'm going to answer after a period of time where, from an athlete point of view, we've been exposed to the same things that the male athletes get from resources point of view. And I think you would see that obviously in sports such as swimming, we have female athletes and male athletes who are equally as successful. Am I wrong, or am I right in thinking that our female athletes are much more successful, proudly? And so...
You are right.
I already knew. But I just think that that's the thing. Like when you look at any other sport across the board that has given that opportunity to female athletes, every single time we succeed in that. And so I think if you were to do the same in any sport, no matter if it's a contact sport, a non-contact sport, or requires a certain level of strength, stamina, whatever it is, I think women as athletes and as people who are willing to put everything, including their entire life, into this one thing that they're trying to achieve, then of course we would have the ability to have these incredible results and success and numbers. So yeah, and I think recently, obviously, the CrossFit Games,
Tia Claire Toomey.
Yeah.
She's got a lot of hyphens in that name.
Yeah.
Tia Claire Toomey Orr. She's a beast.
Yeah, hyph. She's a bit, but this is an example of someone who's just like an absolute incredible athlete that has to be showcased. And there are so many more. She is one of few who's been able to get right to the top, but I think imagine more that are not able to fulfill what they possibly could have. Their ceiling is never reached because they never had the resources or capacity to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. Emma, can you describe a moment when you felt truly seen and celebrated as an athlete? I imagine there might have been a few, but can you pick maybe your favourite?
I think my favourite was probably in Paris because the women did dominate.
Yeah.
And it was the first Olympics that it was equal participation between men and women across all the sports in all the countries. But as a country, we performed so well, but the women especially really did lead the way right from the beginning. And I think that was really amplified as well. And so that was something really special to be a part of.
Yeah, absolutely. Kate, can you touch on that? You talked about Rod Laver, but just that recent success and kind of what those moments are like, being able to celebrate in front of such huge crowds?
Yeah, it was absolutely incredible to see. You know, I've been lucky enough all year to play in sold out stadiums at John Cain Arena. I've got massive stadiums across the country that we have the honour of going and playing in. But John Cain Arena, you know, we'd come from 4th position, which it doesn't happen too often, to win the premiership as complete underdogs. So it was an incredible experience to be able to do that in Melbourne in front of all of our friends and family and our Melbourne Vixens fans. But so many people have got behind our sport, and you know, we have so many young girls who play netball at the grassroots level, and I think one of the biggest progressions is actually now helping them to become Melbourne Vixens fans or Melbourne Mavericks fans or West Coast Fever fans rather than just young girls who play netball, and I think that's a big part of us growing our sport.
As netballers, you guys have been at the forefront of a lot of conversations around your CPA, and there's been a lot between the playing group and the organisation. How has it been, I guess, to be really united as a playing group to create change for your own playing conditions, but also for players that'll come after you?
Yeah, and it's massive. I think for so long we've led in terms of women's sport in Australia, but now we've got competition, and I think competition is the most important thing, because if you don't have competition, you don't grow. You just sort of stay here and you lead the way. And people ask me all the time about AFLW and the Matildas and basketball and how we've got so many young, more opportunities and top level competitions now. And I say that's great, because it means we've got competition, and if we want to stay at the top, we've got to keep getting better. And I think that's only good for every single one of us that sits here. So we'll continue to fight not only for our netball competition. We've got another CPA coming up at the end of next year. I'm not looking forward to that. Hopefully it's a lot smoother, but I think success for one of us is success for all of us, and I think that's really exciting.
If you had control over a sport or league, you don't have to say netball, but I don't want to get you in any trouble.
No,
but if you had control over a league, what would you do differently? What's one thing you would do differently to try and make it as successful as possible?
As I said before, I just think so much of what needs to change is culturally. I think we need to stop comparing ourselves to men. I think, I come from a sport where the women are the top level, and so it's actually backwards to what everyone else is going through. Our men's competition is fighting for more pay, and it's just completely opposite to the rest of the world. So it's crazy in that sense. But I think we need to embrace women's sport for what it is and what its skills are. And no, we can't run as fast, we can't jump as high, but what we can be is we can be more skillful, we can be smarter. And I think the more we stop comparing ourselves and the more we embrace our game for the strength that it is. Like, I'm not going to go, we play against the men's team all the time. I'm not going to throw the ball in the air. I've got to find ways to be smarter, and I think that's what's so great about women's sport, is that we can find our strengths in what it is and we can really embrace those. So I haven't answered your question at all, but I love to chat and I could talk all day about it. One thing that I would change, as I said, I just think the biggest thing is broadcast, getting people watching our game. And I think if we can actually, as I said, change that culture, we get more people watching, we get more money invested in it. And the more money we have, the better athletes that we can become.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. I liked your answer before your answer anyway.
I get very passionate over little things.
I can see that. Matt, if we chat legacy and trailblazers, I think of Lauren Jackson, Penny Taylor, Erin Phillips. Obviously we know her basketball and AFLW career. Who were those people for you as a young person that really inspired you in your career?
Yeah, like you said, mine would have to be Lauren Jackson, and I lean more towards Christy Harrower. But the names you mentioned are definitely up there, and I think that the pathway that they did for basketball and the legacy that they've left only wants the basketballers that are coming through as the next generation to put their foot forward and to pave the way for the grassroots that are coming through as well. So I think that, the legacy that they have left definitely does help the game, and it's starts at the very top, and I think that it's slowly going through, and I think the way that we can be as basketballers is by leading from what they've done and just continuing on in that way is something that's going to help the game a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Debbie, now in your role where you're not playing and being involved in that capacity, kind of taking that look from an administrative role, what do you see as an untapped opportunity in women's footy or women's sport more broadly?
With a lens of AFLW, I would say early on, we didn't really talk about the athletes in terms of what they could actually do linked to performance. And I suppose when we first started, we had to tell the story around Daisy Pearce working as a midwife. I still think that, we need to ensure that we're telling the story around the athletes and their ability and their exceptional ability to perform. So I think in our sphere, we can do much better than that. And then it's about keeping the authenticity of it. So to your point before around, we're not men, you know, in footy, we're not going to kick as long because we're not built like that, but let's celebrate the authenticity and what we can do. And I think that's really important. And then the other thing I would add was, let's think about the opportunity. We're here right now, look where we are, but there's always more to be done. So what is the opportunity to ensure that we keep growing and making sure that women's sport continues to grow?
Yeah, absolutely. So Ray, just on Debbie's point around the Daisy story, and I think the stories that are told about women's footy and women athletes a lot of the time is, I guess, the glorification of the dual careers that are in place out of necessity a lot of the time. Do you think that's something that we'll see shifting as we move towards the professionalisation of women's sport?
Debbie, you sort of spoke about not wanting to completely convert, like we're not trying to make women's sport into men's sport, and also you, Kate, in terms of embracing the differences. So I don't know, when we talk about pay parity and striving for progress with women's sport, whether the pinnacle actually is men's sport. Like, I think we can probably transform our idea of what elite sport is, and maybe that isn't necessarily athletes just purely being athletes. And then often when we look at, like, on social media and the kind of harassment that athletes get, it's because there's like a level of dehumanisation to that. So I think us all individually being humans and having stories, and also being people who play sport, I think that's a really beautiful part of it. Like, the community aspect is so special. So I would hope that we don't move completely away from that. I think we can do both. I think we can acknowledge that it's not necessarily fair for women who are athletes to also have to have another career to survive, but it also makes us, I think, really balanced, well-rounded people in a lot of ways. So drawing from those strengths and then, like, using them as momentum to try and, again, improve sport for everybody, no matter what code, no matter what sport, league, whatever, individual event, I think is really important.
Tay, what moment in your career are you most proud of?
The moment I'm most proud of and continue to be most proud of is when every single opportunity to speak to a young person who you can see looks at you as someone that they want to be. It's something that I looked at Michael Voss as, what I want to be like him. Wasn't exactly the mould that I was probably looking for. I didn't know this at 5 years old, but it was so impactful for me and it kept me in the game. And now we have the opportunity to do that for young people. I'm not going to be remembered as the best kick or mark or any of this, but I can be remembered from this young person as someone who influenced them to either stick in the game or give it a go, or maybe it just makes them feel better for 5 minutes. And I think yesterday we were at the men's game promoting our season that's coming up on the weekend, and there was so many young D's fans that were there for the men's game, of course, but were so excited and almost dragged their parents over to meet us who were there just to say hi. And every single time I get the opportunity to do that, that's exactly why I continue to play. And there's been a lot of adversity along the way and challenges and injuries and everything, and it could all, I'm aware that it could all change at any moment. So every single opportunity I get to do that, it's heaps of fun, because kids, it's pretty hard to have a bad conversation with a young person who's so excited to see you. Makes you feel pretty grounded and pretty happy about yourself. So yeah, that would be my proudest thing that I get the opportunity to do.
Yeah, I love that. And as someone who has been your former teammate at another team with blue in it, not the D's, but another team, and just being your friend as well, it's something that I love watching you. I think the way you interact with people and the patience and time you give people is something that's really special about you as well. I should do compliments along the line, sorry guys, but that was just, I love Tay lots. I love you all, but I love Tay lots too. We've talked today about what fans can be doing in a more practical sense, about turning on the telly, even if you're not home, buying a membership, going to buy a ticket. What does that actually translate into when fans are doing something proactive like that?
Contracts, like, I think so many different things. I think access to resources, like, I think it holds people accountable. The people, when I say people making decisions and deciding who gets to be paid and who gets to use the ice bath, for example. I think it has really tangible outcomes that are so crucial to allowing us to continue what we do, and not just do it, but do it and get better. Like, I think it just increases improvement across the board. So yes, I couldn't be more grateful for people who say they support women's sport and then actually put concrete actions in place to make that support mean something. physical.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. Like if you turn on the TV, that goes towards the broadcast data that comes back and says people are watching us. And that means more money is invested back into the athletes, back into the sport. So as much as you can say you support women's sport, come to a game, we've got more, we can break records with attendance, we can show that people want to see us, turn on the TV, become a member. And I think also too, you just make it an even better spectacle. If you come to the game, the atmosphere that we get to play amongst is even greater as well. But don't underestimate the impact that you can have as a fan.
Yeah, do yourself a favour and come and watch women's sport, because it's more than just the on-field spectacle. It's the environment, the inclusiveness. It's a family-friendly environment, especially. So people with young families, going to the MCG with 70,000 other people is probably daunting at 7:35 at night. But coming to an AFLW game at a ground that is accessible and has activations around the ground, and I just have seen so many young families and heard the experience has just been the best. It's 4 hours of fun, and I just am so proud that we create that space in women's sport. And of course there's the dream of playing in the big stadiums and packing out the stadium. That will come, and we're ambitious and we will achieve that. But as of today and the season coming up, attending a game of AFLW or any women's sport, I can guarantee will give you, if nothing else, but a great experience. And then I'm sure that you'll find passion for your team and buy some merchandise as well and wear it proudly.
I think we saw in the early days of season 1, fans turning up what it did. So on the eve of when you were about to kick your first kick for the Blues, 27,000 people turned up. We didn't know that was going to happen, but that was a stake in the ground for many reasons, for the AFL, for the public. So fans turning up really were critical in moving the dial into AFLW season 2, because they turned up. People started watching, people went, oh, there is an appetite, which then had this on-flow effect of commercial sponsorship, revenue for clubs. Revenue creates greater investment back into the sport, and that's what the key is. One of the keys. One.
So Ray, Tay touched on the young fans at the men's game that were coming up to you guys. Ahead of season 10 of AFLW, what can Dee's AFLW fans be doing to help support you guys and help grow the game of AFLW?
For sure. I think number one is show up. Where's the camera? Show up. We're hitting we've got a really ambitious target this year for 7,000. And when I say really ambitious, it's not because it's unattainable, but because just again, marking from where we've come and where we are now, 7,000 was unheard of previously. So it's amazing to be striving for something like that. So number one, I think buy your membership. There's really good deals happening, check them out. I'm sure there's links attached, maybe link in bio. And if that's outside your financial means, not everyone can afford it all the time. Talking about women's sport, sharing posts if you're on social media, having conversations with other people, normalising women's sport, not just normalising being excited about it. I think there's just so many different ways. Coming up to Taylor and saying hi, ask for a signature, all of those things I think contribute in a really positive way. And I do want to shout out all the other leagues, because I just think as much as it's Melbourne Football Club is running this show right now, I think it's just really amazing what everyone's doing in all their sports. So what was the sentence someone said earlier about just a success? I think it was UK. Success for one is a success for all. I think any time that we're supporting women's sport and really just being excited about seeing female athletes compete and succeed, that's all we need to do.
I think the biggest thing you can do is pick a team, support them, go and watch them. I feel like it's not even about picking a team, but whoever you can support. If it's just women's sport, I always say, even if you're not home, turn the TV on if there's women's sport on. We all talk about it and we all say we want women's sport to grow and get better. Well, I think everyone has to put their hand up and actually take action. And even if it's as simple as turning the TV on when, Melbourne's playing or when Southside's playing, turn it on and watch it.
There's a role for everyone to play. So the athletes play a role by playing the game and creating visibility, but we really need to build the village. And building the village is the fans. And that's how we're going to move the dial. It's going to connect to commercial, it's going to connect to membership. We often hear we support women's football. Well, the question is, how are you supporting women's football? And I think that's really important. I think we need to call out that. We're at a time now where we've got to a place in women's sport which is absolutely phenomenal, but now it's time to go again. And part of that is it's the athletes play a role organically, but we can all play a role. And I think that's really significant, how we're actually going to make the next jump in the sporting landscape.
We at the Female Athlete Project often use the phrase a rising tide lifts all boats, and I feel like that's kind of what you're talking about there, this idea that one athlete succeeding, one league succeeding lifts all of us up. But thank you all so much for sharing your incredible answers today. It's been really, really special. To have the chance to sit down with 6 athletes of your calibre is quite unique, and it's been really special, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chloe.
And you, Chloe, you're pretty cool yourself.
Thanks, Ray.
Just above everybody.
Wait, what am I? Hold on a second. When you say subscribe, well, I've just got to subscribe. Jesus. Hold on, have I even said subscribe? Okay.